At 18, the crown prince sought to select his primary consort. To evade the selection, I journeyed to the capital with a pair of fawns to arrange a betrothal. Su Jiue and I had been childhood sweethearts, needing only to exchange betrothal letters. Yet by the 3rd year, he repeatedly refused. I waited in the capital for 3 months before he finally came to my door. But he sighed. It's not that I refuse, but I've lost the betrothal letter. Yet just the day before yesterday, I clearly saw him give the betrothal notice to Miss Chen. I set down my teacup. Then it's settled. Yesterday, the betrothal gifts and name inquiry took place. My birth chart has already been sent to the palace. Last night's rain brought an even chillier wind today. The last time I saw Su Jiue, he wore silk robes. Today he's changed into a straight-cut robe with a cloak. He saw only me in the main hall, his tone hesitant. Where is Lord Wang? I paused slightly. Father and mother have gone out. Su Jiue visibly relaxed. He instructed his attendant to bring forth a gift. I've been occupied these past days and only now come to pay my respects. I've brought some token of apology. I gazed at his clear, handsome features and found myself momentarily lost. 6 years ago, Su Jiue had lodged at my maternal grandfather's home while traveling to the capital for the imperial examinations. My grandfather admired his talent and scholarship, and noticing my flushed cheeks, had intended to arrange our betrothal. Su Jiue had sworn solemnly, once his name appeared on the golden list of successful candidates, he would marry me. Born into a humble family, he failed the exams on his first attempt. During his preparations, my father, who held a post in the capital, had offered him considerable support. Back then, we exchanged letters frequently, one each month. 3 years ago, Su Jiue passed the imperial examinations with second-class honors and entered the Hanlin Academy. Yet he kept evading the marriage matter. The first year, he said settling in the capital was no easy feat and he needed to secure a residence before proposing. The 2nd year, he claimed his duties were overwhelming and he couldn't spare the time for marriage. Before the 3rd year's letter arrived, my maternal grandfather received news. The crown prince was selecting his principal consort, and if I remained unmarried, my name would be considered. I hurried back to the capital to find Su Jiue. That day, as I arrived at the city gate, I happened upon him leaving. He looked at me from his horse, startled for a moment. Your letter was merely 2 days late. How could a young lady of your standing be so anxious? Su Jiue possessed extraordinary beauty, the very object of my youthful heart's flutter. So in that moment, lost in the joy of reunion, I completely missed the impatience in his brow. Having not seen him for years, I gathered many novel gifts, a white jade hairpin, embroidered brocade, and a pair of fawns I raised especially for him. His gaze had been fixed on the city walls, but when he saw the fawns, his eyes lit up and his tone softened. Sister Yuan Zhao has just returned to the capital. You must be weary from your journey. Why not go home and rest? I have important matters today. I shall visit you another day. With that, he spurred his horse toward his estate outside the city. What are you thinking about, Sister Yuan Zhao? I snapped back to reality and saw the rouge box cradled in Su Ziyu's palm. My heart leapt with joy. Jinning Hall's rouge was sold in limited quantities each month. I hadn't managed to get any in the 3 months since arriving in the capital. I never imagined he would buy it for me. I accepted it utmost care and gently opened it. My smile froze on my face. Girls all love things like this. I bought it especially for you. The mother of pearl box was exquisite, but the rouge seemed moldy from being stored too long. Worse still, a note lay inside. The handwriting was one ID known for years. Utterly familiar. What the heart holds, when will it forget? With respect, to Miss Chen. So it was something someone else had returned. The last shred of hope in my heart vanished. His tone was the familiar tenderness. I know you're anxious about the betrothal, but these past months I truly had no time. I took a sip of tea, suppressing a cold smile at the corner of my lips. 3 months bathing only once every fortnight, and he was too busy every single time. Seeing I didn't argue, he sighed deeply. It's not that I refuse. But I lost the betrothal notice. I set down my teacup. Then it settled. He exhaled in relief. Yet his brow still furrowed. What do you mean, settled? I maintained the decorum instilled in me since childhood. Since young Master Su has set his heart on another. A promise made in youth holds no weight. Su Jiue flinched in surprise before his tone turned tender. Don't speak in anger. When have I ever admired another? Besides, I saw your affection clearly. Just wait a few more days. Stop throwing a tantrum. The man before me overlapped with the one from 6 years ago, yet felt utterly unfamiliar. Back then, he truly was as pure as the moonlight, blushing crimson even when returning my dropped handkerchief. Now, he lies before me without a flicker of shame. At the polo match the day before yesterday, I saw Miss Chen making quite a splash. Amidst the garden's swaying shadows, her and Su Ziyu's figures were indistinct. Yet their voices carried clearly. I've long admired Miss Mu. This is my sincere offering. Chen Nongxi took the betrothal invitation with a graceful smile. Marriage requires the matchmaker's words. I await Magistrate Su's sincerity. She tossed the betrothal note back into Su Ziyu's embrace. He failed to catch it, and it fell to the ground, watching that unrequited note drift lightly into the mud. My heart twisted in agony. Youthful infatuation, like a broken string of pearls, could never be whole again. Seeing my silence, Su Jiue stepped forward and tugged at my sleeve. I casually opened my rouge box, the note flashing before his eyes. Yet he showed no panic, his tone instead tinged with amusement. It's merely a mistaken gift meant for another family. Is that truly worth your jealousy, Sister Yuan Zhao? And you claimed you couldn't bear to marry me. His flippancy sickened me. I gestured toward the door. Mr. Su, we are no longer young. Calling me younger sister is inappropriate. Su Jiue abruptly stood, his face turning ashen. I once thought you were well-read and sensible. Now you throw a tantrum over such baseless accusations. Reflect on your behavior. We'll discuss the marriage matter another time. He left in haste. Knocking over the tea bowl, spilled tea splashed onto my robe. This fabric was the return gift for those little deer. Now it's stained, and I no longer want it. Mother was summoned to the palace to deliver my portrait and birth chart. Even if I'm not chosen, I don't wish to marry Su Jiue. I must make this clear to him. After leaving the estate, Su Jiue went to Luquan Pavilion. When I rushed there, his shadow intertwined with Chen Nongxi's on the screen. Chen Nongxi poured him a cup of wine, and he eagerly took a sip. The wine was potent, and Su Jiue coughed incessantly, while she laughed until she doubled over. Master Su, you're late. You must drink extra cups as punishment. Unable to hold his liquor, he downed 3 cups in succession. Trivial matters delayed me today. Please forgive me. Miss Chen. Her fingernails dug into my palm. Inside the mansion, my conversation with Su Jiue had been perfectly civil, yet he suddenly flew into a rage and stormed out. Turns out he had prior plans. I was still agonizing over how to speak with him alone when Chen Nongxi sat down beside him. Leaning her head against his shoulder, I saw the cloak she wore, and my mind went blank. That deer hide clearly came from the fawn I gifted Su Jiue. In our correspondence, had once mentioned his fondness for deer. I selected 2 from my estate and raised them for 2 years, just to present them to him personally. One bore a spot on its back resembling a lotus flower. I cherished it dearly. Now, that lotus blooms upon Chen Nongxi's chest. Chen Nongxi tugged at the cloak, her voice sweet and playful. I've been wearing the deer skin you gave me. I specially sought out a skilled artisan it took 3 months to craft. Su Ziyu's tone was gentle. It looks beautiful. Only you could wear it so well. Deer skin, one of the 6 rites of betrothal. Su Jiue had stripped the skin from my beloved pet and given it to another woman, all to win her smile. The early autumn breeze carried a chill, I scarcely knew how I made my way back to the estate, until I heard my mother's startled cry. Zhao, why are you crying? Tears had already smudged my makeup. She embraced me, patting my back gently. Your father and I don't care for Su Jiue. We find him rather pretentious. But if you truly love him, we will support you. Keep a low profile when you enter the palace in a few days. Once you're released and return home, they'll find someone to arrange a match for him. The selection of the crown prince's consort prioritizes family background and character. Having been raised by my grandfather for 8 years, I was well cultivated. Now it seems mutual affection is nothing but a mirage. So what difference does it make whether I enter the palace or whom I marry? I wiped away my tears and shook my head. Mother, I know my limits. Master. Su Jiue snapped back to reality at the servant's call. He frowned at the white jade hairpin in his hand. It bore a resemblance to the one Wang Yuanzhao had given him, exquisitely carved peach blossoms. Though somewhat plain, the jeweler's tone was obsequious. Sir, you have excellent taste. This jade is of the finest quality, warm to the touch, perfect for presenting to your beloved. Su Jiue remained silent for a long while before finally purchasing it. These past 2 days, his mind had been elsewhere. Perhaps it was because Wang Yuanzhao hadn't sent another letter. When she first arrived in the capital, had received her letters almost daily after finishing his duties. Trivial matters. Utterly tedious. Yet her delicate handwriting remained pleasing. Without her distractions these past 2 weeks, life felt strangely dull. The young servant, hands laden with jewelry and fabrics, spoke with puzzlement. Master, Miss Wang adores you wholeheartedly. And you care for her too. Why not marry her? Su Jiue looked at the boy who had served him since childhood, thinking he was beyond redemption. Born into poverty, had once thought passing the imperial exams and entering the court would be enough. But upon reaching the capital, he learned how treacherous the bureaucratic waters ran. Wang Yuanzhao was lovely, yet her father was merely a vice minister of rights. Now that he served in the Hanlin Academy, having a father-in-law of 5th rank would mean at least 20 years of waiting to advance. Qin Nongxi was different. Her father was the general of the northern frontier, though had been mysteriously recalled to the capital this past half-year. Securing this marriage alliance would finally set his career trajectory straight. Moreover, Qin Nongxi clearly harbored affection for him, having even invited him on hunting trips outside the city. If he became the general of the northern frontier's son-in-law, the Wang family might well consent to marry their daughter to him as a secondary wife. Wang Yuanzhao, who admired him, would surely endure a few years of hardship. Once he rose to prominence, elevating Wang Yuanzhao to cowife wasn't out of the question. The more Su Jiue pondered it, the more feasible it seemed. Send this hairpin to the Qin residence. The rest are for Miss Wang. The servant's troubled expression turned into a grin. That's the spirit. Master is happiest when reading Miss Wang's letters. Su Jiue tapped his head. Stop speculating. I have no interest in Miss Wang. The servant had barely left when Su Jiue encountered colleagues from the Hanlin Academy. They were deep in lively conversation. A casual ear caught a familiar name. Minister Wang is so young, yet he's being promoted to Minister of State. He's always been talented. He requested assignment to the 6 ministries himself. Rapid promotion is only natural. And with that kind of background, Su Jiue, puzzled, interjected. But is it the Minister of Rights, Wang? What background could he have? His colleague looked stunned. Brother Su, you don't know that Minister Wang's father-in-law is the former deputy chief minister, Lu Heng. Back in Yuezhou, Wang Yuanz's maternal grandfather had indeed been a Lu, though the man possessed great bearing. Su had merely assumed him to be a reclusive scholar. He never imagined him to be a retired deputy prime minister. Before Su could recover from his shock, a servant arrived laden with bundles. Master, it's terrible. The Wang family has returned all the gifts. Su Ziyu's brows knitted, his tone turning icy. Why? The servant swallowed hard, his voice faltering. The Wang family said their daughter was selected as the crown prince's principal consort. She entered the palace over 10 days ago. A palace matron came to our residence to teach etiquette for 3 days. I was sent into the palace at dawn. The selection of the primary consort differs from the imperial beauty contest. Those favored by the empress are first brought into the palace for observation and a trial stay. Sharing the palace with me was the young lady from the Zhang family, barely 16. She found the unfamiliar surroundings daunting and constantly sought companionship, clinging to me wherever we went. Ah! Zhang Miaoqing stumbled, letting out a startled cry. I remained composed, offering her a steady hand. Today, the empress wanted to see our poetry and calligraphy. So the audience lasted longer than usual. The empress lifted her eyes, her gaze settling on Zhang Miaoqing. And she smiled brightly. Your poems are all quite good. You may retire. It wasn't until we reached the imperial garden that Zhang Miaoqing's hand reached for my sleeve. Do you think the empress might tire of me? Zhang Miaoqing's father was a doctor of the Imperial Academy, but he was, after all, only a distant relative of the empress. I patted her hand. The empress is kind and forgiving. She seemed to want to say more, but rain suddenly began to fall. Yet someone was already in the pavilion. His attire was simple yet refined, through the curtain of rain falling from the eaves. He looked up, startled at first, then moved toward the farthest corner. My timing is poor. Please come in. Zhang Miaoqing hid behind me, bowing alongside me to the man before us. To avoid suspicion, he kept his gaze fixed outside the pavilion. But Zhang Miaoqing kept stealing glances. The autumn rain came swiftly and departed just as quickly. Only after the man left did Zhang Miaoqing breathe a sigh of relief. He couldn't be an outsider. Could he? Wouldn't that be improper? I shook my head gently. Palace regulations were strict, hierarchy rigid, and the prince's attire followed established protocol. Encountering the crown prince was not our fault. Yet Zhang Miaoqing still trembled. Sister, whatever happens today, you must never tell anyone. I couldn't help but laugh. All right. Zhang Miaoqing became cautious, daring not to leave the house except for formal greetings. She spent her days clinging to me, embroidering flowers indoors to pass the time, until the 7th day of the 9th month. That day, the crown prince sat beside the empress. Zhang Miaoqing stared for a long moment, then hastily lowered her head, stealing glances at me. The empress' voice remained dignified and composed. Has the crown prince found anyone to his liking? If not, mother will decide for you. Chu Chu's gaze fell upon me, his smile gentle. When I first began my studies, Father Emperor assigned Minister Liu to instruct me in the classics. The empress paused, hesitated for a moment, then beckoned me forward. The golden silk sash, symbolizing the title of imperial consort, was fastened around my wrist. The palace walls were deep, the streets long and winding. The matron attending the empress escorted me out of the palace. Her voice was neither warm nor cold. The palace has its established protocols. An imperial edict will be delivered to your residence in a few days. I bowed my head in thanks. Hearing the clatter of footsteps behind me, Zhang Miaoqing was slightly out of breath, the tassels of her hair ornament dangling in her hair. The innocence of her eyes was gone, replaced by a furious glare. I knew she would come looking for me. The empress had no powerful maternal relatives to support her. Otherwise, Zhang Miaoqing and the empress would not be strangers. But now, the emperor was in his twilight years. After a month of living together, she had caused me no small amount of discomfort in subtle ways. She had openly and covertly guided me toward indiscretions, repeatedly provoking me in hopes of catching me in a lapse of decorum. I had dodged each attempt, harboring no illusions. Yet, unexpectedly, Xu Chu had chosen me. Perhaps the empress had not anticipated it either. The matron had already stepped several paces away, leaving me alone to face Zhang Miaoqing's interrogation. Did you recognize the crown prince that day? After all I've done for you, you kept this from me. I remained silent. Zhang Miaqing must have recognized the crown prince. That's why she tested me repeatedly and barred me from leaving. Yet upon returning home, the empress still paved her path. The facade couldn't be shattered. The crown prince's procession saved me. He approached my side, lowering his gaze with a faint smile. We meet again. I curtsied, and Zhang Miaqing fell silent. Zhu Chu accompanied me the rest of the way. The sun beat down fiercely. He shifted left and right, positioning me beneath the canopy. Only when we reached the gate did I see the carriage from my residence. Your Highness, this humble maiden must return. He lowered his head, his gaze meeting mine. Have you forgotten me? Has the peach tree in your courtyard borne fruit? The peach tree in the northwest corner bore no fruit this year, but father said it surely would next year. I was raised from childhood at my grandfather's side. Before he retired from office, months before leaving the capital, a young boy visited the estate, surrounded by attendants. He listened to my grandfather explain intricate texts in the study. In the sweltering midsummer, the peach tree that had watched me grow stood bare and leafless. Standing in the courtyard, gazing at that dead peach tree, I nearly wept. There would be no more sweet peaches to eat. Why are you crying? Boys of the same age always grow slower than girls. He was half a head shorter than me, delicate and fair, dressed in rich brocade. Yet his tone was neither hurried nor slow. Remarkably steady. I shared my trivial worries of the moment, and he listened earnestly. Then I'll give you another peach tree, but when it bears fruit someday, remember to invite me to feast. Days later, palace attendants transplanted a peach sapling to our estate. His smile was obsequious. Miss, this is a newly cultivated variety from the palace, a unique imperial gift. I never saw that boy again, nor knew he was the crown prince. Not until our household fell into disgrace, my grandfather impeached, and I followed him back to Yuezhou. That peach tree finally blossomed for the first time. I couldn't bear to part with the cherished peaches, nor could I bear to see the tree transplanted to Yuezhou, where the soil and climate were unsuitable. So my father bought my grandfather's courtyard. It turned out I had met Zhu Chu much earlier than I thought, and I still owed him a peach banquet. The carriage rocked and swayed. My mother's soft call snapped me back to reality. Her face bore a look of concern as she gently patted my hand. You've lost weight. There was no trace of joy at my selection. There will always be parents who worry for their daughters, confined within high walls for a lifetime. I clasped my mother's hand in return. I haven't lost weight. Look again carefully. The gifts sent by the Su family couldn't be returned. Su Jiue had also presented a calling card, stating he would visit during his next leave. I stared at the elegant calligraphy, finding it somewhat laughable. His letters usually arrived in hastily scrawled characters. Yet now, when I wished to overlook them, they were treated with such earnestness. Mother frowned. You needn't trouble yourself. I shall handle it. I shook my head. We should clarify matters. Days had passed since my return, yet no imperial decree granting marriage to the crown prince had arrived from the palace. Instead, rumors began swirling in the capital. They said the princess of the Wang family, having failed to win the empress' favor, was hastily chosen only because of secret dealings that had stirred the crown prince's heart. Whispers spread that Zhu Chu and I had exchanged flirtatious glances in the imperial garden, and that I had lingered, looking back 3 times before leaving. When my maid relayed this to me, her face flushed crimson with anger. Yet I felt a strange sense of relief. Zhang Miaqing had made a terrible blunder. She could have married into the imperial clan, or even returned to the palace after the crown prince ascended the throne. But by spreading such rumors, she had effectively slapped the Empress Dowager in the face. Within days, as Dr. Zhang was banished from the capital, the gossip died down. Zhu Chu immediately appeared at my residence gate, inviting me to the imperial gardens. It was the season for autumn hunts. The sky clear and crisp. Seated by the enclosure, I watched him and the palace attendants hunt. He captured a pair of fawns. The doe, quick-witted, could have fled, yet refused to abandon her young. She shielded her fawn beneath her body, wailing desperately, gazing into her watery eyes. I instinctively stroked her antlers. The deer I gave to Su Jiue was about this size. Did it cry out too, when its hide was scraped off with a sharpened blade? Soothed by my touch, the deer gradually calmed, nudging my waist with its muzzle. Choo Choo dismounted, and the doe darted behind me. I heard you love deer, so am giving this one to you. My impending marriage flashed through my mind, and I feared he might be offering me only a pelt. I lowered my eyes. Better to set it free. The fawn is young. Without its mother, it won't survive long. Choo Choo paused, shaking his head with a bitter smile. What nonsense. Who would give you a deer only to present you with its pelt? That would be too cruel. My gaze flickered as he continued. If you like it, well, raise it in the palace from now on, unaware of any danger. The fawn circled me twice before trotting back to suckle. Noticing the sweat beading on Choo Choo's forehead, I drew a handkerchief from my sleeve. During my days in the palace, I'd embroidered many. Your Highness. Wipe your brow. Autumn's chill thickened as the wind swept fallen leaves across the ground. His eyes brightened slightly as he took the handkerchief, cradling it carefully in his hands and stroking it. These are unsettled times. But since I've chosen you, rest assured, before today, I'd been anxious. But Choo Choo's ceremonial procession now stood before the mansion gates, already backing me up. He brushed a fallen leaf from my shoulder. Yuan Zhao. The northern frontier is unstable. I must leave the capital in a few days. Returning home, I learned Su Xiao had waited all afternoon. Tea was refilled again and again on the table. Though impatient, he didn't storm off as he had before. I changed my clothes and went to the main hall. The floor was packed with wooden crates, leaving barely any space to stand. Su Jiue rose hastily, his irritation barely concealed. Just because you've been to the palace once, you start neglecting your guests, making me wait like this. Only then did I recall today was his day off. Receiving his invitation without preparation was my fault. I had servants serve tea and gave a slight curtsy. Mr. Su, there are matters we must clarify today. He raised his hand to interrupt. Last time I said we'd discuss marriage later. You threw a tantrum and went to select the imperial consort. Now that you've returned home after failing to be selected, it's time to settle down. With that, he produced a betrothal notice from his sleeve. The paper was exquisite, the ink fresh and crisp. This was not the one discarded by Chen Nongxi. He looked down at me. Where is your birth chart? Once exchanged, I shall seek a colleague to act as matchmaker. I remained silent. No imperial decree had been issued. Yet the Hanlin Academy was known for its well-connected intelligence. 2 years prior, he had mentioned in a letter that he had gained the emperor's favor and was entrusted with recording court proceedings. Now, however, he had been assigned to compile and revise historical texts, leaving him unable to even inquire about the selection of the empress consort. His position had become quite marginal. Seeing my lack of response, he likely assumed shyness, his smile growing more composed. Years ago, I received guidance from the venerable Master Lu. These past years, I haven't prepared a substantial gift. Once we are wed, I shall certainly pay my respects again. I asked why he suddenly wished to propose marriage. It turned out he had learned of my grandfather's identity. I took a step back, my tone growing colder. When you failed your initial exams, my father offered considerable support. Yet once you entered the Hanlin Academy, all contact ceased. Su Ziu's face flushed with panic, his brow furrowing. Maintaining frequent contact would invite gossip. I fixed my gaze directly on his eyes. In Yue Zhou, my maternal grandfather, moved by your poverty, prepared funds for your journey to the capital. While in the capital, my father saw your diligence and even rented a small courtyard for you. If you feared gossip, why accept these kindnesses? This was a blatant accusation that he was a two-faced, opportunistic wolf. Su Jiuyue paused, then grew furious. With such sharp tongue, have you disregarded our betrothal to secure a better match? I swept my sleeve aside and ordered the servant to bring forth the gifts Su Jiuyue had once bestowed upon me. All told, they filled no more than a single chest, not even a tenth of what he had brought today. Minister Su, we have neither matchmaker's words nor exchanged betrothal tokens. Where is this so-called engagement? I am now the first consort of the Eastern Palace. Soon, an envoy bearing the imperial seal will arrive. Watch your words. His form froze instantly, processing my words for a long moment. His gaze shifted from shock to bewilderment, then to resentment. Attendants carried all the gift boxes he brought outside the mansion. After all, he was someone I once admired in my youth, and I couldn't help but offer a warning. Don't fixate on fleeting fortune. Position matters more than status. But he took it as insult and provocation. When Su Jiuyue looked up again, his face was dark. You all look down on me. Never underestimate a young man in poverty. The betrothal ceremony was conducted with utmost solemnity, with the chief minister and deputy chief minister serving as the principal and deputy envoys, beyond the customary gifts of grain and 6 horses. Emperor Zhu Chu had instructed that many more be added. I was astonished by the sheer volume of the betrothal gifts. Feeling somewhat overwhelmed, the chief minister, however, wore a broad smile. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince personally visited me that day, entrusting me with this role as chief envoy. A few extra gifts are hardly surprising. After the formalities concluded, a black-clad guard approached my side. I recognized him, often accompanied Zhu Chu. He carried a rather large food box. Still emitting a chill, the East Palace has received fresh peaches from Yangshan. His Highness kept none for himself and sent them all over. With that, he handed me the letter tucked within his robes. Since I cannot attend your peach banquet, I shall feast on yours instead. The man had clearly put considerable thought into this. I knelt again and again, exhausted by the day's demands. These peaches were precious, and Zhu Chu's gesture all the more rare. The news of the Eastern Palace's new mistress had barely circulated in the capital for a few days before being overshadowed by an even more talked-about event. Su Jiuyue, a compiler in the Hanlin Academy, had married into the household of the Northern Frontier General's youngest daughter. When the Northern Frontier General returned to the capital by imperial decree, he left his eldest son behind in the Northern Frontier. The emperor had once considered arranging a marriage for Chen Nongxi, only to be rebuffed by General Chen. This back and forth had already tarnished the imperial family's dignity, and now the general's refusal to remain in the capital was openly declared. On the day Su Jiuyue entered the Northern Frontier General's residence, the emperor flew into a rage. During the morning court session, he stripped the Northern Frontier General of his hereditary titles. He also dispatched others to take control of the Northern Frontier Army. I recalled Zhu Chu's words. The Northern Frontier is in turmoil, and sensed a storm gathering. Zhu Chu waved his hand before my eyes. What are you thinking about? Autumn was drawing to a close, and the river crabs were plump. The Quanjas crab-stuffed oranges were a specialty. He held a silver spoon, carefully peeling the piping hot crab meat onto a porcelain plate and placing it before me. My heart was heavy with worry, and I could not swallow. He saw right through me. Yuan Zhao. His eyes were like spring snow melting, his gaze shifting, yet his expression remained resolute. Lord Lu was my mentor. He could not change the course of events and withdrew from the court, but I have always remembered his teachings. I lowered my brows. In my youth, I thought my maternal grandfather had simply grown weary of officialdom. Only after understanding politics did I grasp his grievances. General Qin was an imperial relative from the early years of our dynasty. His family granted hereditary titles. This turmoil was inevitable. Having entered the imperial family, I could not escape being drawn into the fray. Before the crab feast was finished, guards whispered reminders of the hour to Zhu Chu's ear. His eyes held regret as he draped his cloak over my shoulders. I cannot escort you back to the mansion. The newly appointed general of the Northern Frontier is young. His troops may resist his command. Someone must remain to maintain order. My heart lurched, and I clenched my fists. Nothing could soothe the soldiers' hearts more than the Crown Prince's personal condolences. Chu squeezed my hand. I will return safely. After my coronation, the Empress fell ill. During my routine visits to the palace, I could only announce my presence outside the chambers. The eunuch escorting me out was excessively obsequious, and through his scattered remarks, I pieced together the situation. With General Chen's precedent, the Empress had reached out to the former court, a move the Emperor disapproved of. Grandfather arrived in the capital before the end of the 12th lunar month. This would be my last New Year's Eve outside the palace, so I cherished it deeply. During the New Year's Eve feast, I received urgent New Year gifts and a letter from Zhu Chu. He wrote that the transfer of military authority had proceeded smoothly, though some minor matters remained. He would return to the capital within 3 months at most. I immediately picked up my brush to reply. But Mother stopped me. Tomorrow you'll be visiting Qingbao Temple to offer incense. Why not request a talisman for safety to send along with your reply? My cheeks flushed with embarrassment as I nodded in agreement. On the first day of the first lunar month, the temple was bustling with worshippers. I obtained a blessing plaque and hung it upon the prayer tree. The biting north wind whistled through the branches, causing the plaques to clink like wind chimes. My gaze drifted, and I saw the familiar handwriting on the red silk ribbon. Su Jiue Wang Yuan Zhao. The ink was still wet. The characters hastily scrawled, as if written in a state of deep melancholy. Yuan Zhao. Su Jiue stood behind me, having watched for who knows how long, unseen for 3 months. He appeared gaunt and worn, his face heavy with sorrow. Before I could speak, the maid beside me interjected. How dare you? The Crown Prince's consort's given name is not for you to address so freely. Su Jiue swayed slightly, then bowed his head reluctantly. He tucked away the double heart knot, a symbol of marital harmony. Since returning to the capital, Qin Nongxi had behaved erratically. She wouldn't remain devoted to Su Jiue just because he had married into her family. Today she patronized a young male entertainer. Tomorrow she kept a male favorite. And the day after she took a fancy to the newly appointed third-place scholar. Rumors swirled thickly. Head hoped marrying into the household would propel him to high office. But instead, his move enraged the emperor, branding him a traitor within the palace. Life promised to be harsh. Su Jiue spoke. I once held the emperor's favor, serving in the imperial study, but since meeting Qin Nongxi, my official career has dimmed. And I've lost even the one who truly loved me. Qin Nongxi once treated me with warmth and kindness, but since I was assigned to the compilation bureau, her affection has faded. Yet I had no heart to listen to his regrets and complaints. The snow made the road slippery, but I walked faster and faster. Something important had been overlooked. I must hurry back to the mansion and send a letter to Zhu Chu. Winter gave way to spring. The seasons shifted, and the emperor fell gravely ill, while the capital appeared serene. Dark currents churned within the palace. As crown princess, I volunteered to attend to His Majesty's illness. Yet before the emperor recovered, urgent dispatches arrived from the frontier. The crown prince, rushing back across 1,000 miles, had fallen to his death from a cliff. It was said the emperor, upon hearing the news, coughed up blood incessantly. Court physicians treated him in shifts, while panic gripped the palace. Then, General Qin rebelled. Troops lying in wait outside the capital surged into the imperial city. With limited forces within the walls, the imperial guards fought desperately. General Qin, laughing triumphantly, addressed the emperor. He declared he had seized the crown prince and now claimed the throne for himself. Standing in the bedchamber, I listened to the clamor of battle outside. The sounds drew nearer. I set down the bowl of medicine. I seized a sword and stood before His Majesty's bed. But the sounds outside changed again. A denser clanging of metal followed, and moments later, the dust settled. Someone ascended the steps and pushed open the chamber door. First, A firm hand grasped mine. Then he knelt at the emperor's bedside. Father, the rebels have been vanquished. Your son has fulfilled his duty. Chu led troops to confiscate the Qin estate and execute the remaining faction members. He extended his hand toward me. Yuan Zhao, come. You too are a meritorious subject. That day at Qingbao Temple, I suddenly realized something was amiss. Qin Nongxi had courted Su Xiao upon returning to the capital, solely because he recorded the emperor's daily activities. Once she understood His Majesty's habits and long-standing ailments, she lost interest in Su Xiao. General Qin had commanded the border for years. How could he willingly surrender his military authority? He sought the crown prince's life. So I sent word, warning Zhu Chu to be vigilant. He deployed 3 shadow guards, who slew the assassins sent by General Chen and fabricated reports of his death. Father also entered the palace to submit a secret memorial, reinforcing the palace's military defenses. Then we set the trap of the emperor's grave illness, luring him into the snare. Layers of blood stained the gates of the Qin residence crimson. Servants scattered in flight. Corpses littered the courtyards. General Chen's eldest son had been executed in the northern frontier. Only Qin Nongxi remained. Chu's soldiers searched every corner of the Qin residence before reporting back. Your Royal Highness, we found him, but he led us to a side chamber, outside the secret passage to the city road. Su Xiao stood clutching a blood-dripping dagger, his white robes drenched in crimson. Qin Nongxi lay on the floor, throat slit, utterly dead. The Qin clan was accused of rebellion and exterminated down to the 3rd generation. Su Xiao, imprisoned in the imperial jail, refused to accept the verdict. In the cold, damp dungeon, I saw him. After slaying Qin Nongxi with his own hands, he had descended into madness. Now, though gaunt and haggard, his eyes held a fleeting clarity. He had passed the imperial examinations before even reaching adulthood, with powerful patrons backing him. Such an end was truly his own doing. Su Xiao saw me, gripped the bars tightly, and reached out desperately for the hem of my robe. I took another step back. He spoke. Yuan Zhao, have you come to rescue me? I stopped Qin Nongxi from escaping. Could this atone for my sins? I recalled the calm expression on his face as he polished the dagger, and a chill ran through me. She was your first wife. He gave a cold laugh. So what? If not for her, how would my career have been ruined? How would we have missed each other? He was always like this, obsessed only with himself. He exploited everything that benefited him, squeezing out every ounce of value before discarding it. And his betrayal. He claimed it was out of necessity. He was so intelligent, how could he not have known of the Qin family's plot? Yet he did nothing. He exposed nothing. General Chen's blade of rebellion swung to within 200 paces of the emperor's bedchamber. I laughed. I am truly grateful we missed each other. The guard brought the poisoned wine and placed it before him. Su Xiao stared at me in disbelief. You are troll. Why heartless? My tone was icy. You knew that if the rebellion succeeded, I would surely die. What did you think then? Imprison me, or dispose of me? Like the fawn you were given. Su Xiao's choked sobs echoed through the dungeon. I could no longer bear to see him like this. Behind me came the clatter of cups shattering, followed by a gurgling sound from his throat. Then, silence. I stood rooted to the spot, trembling uncontrollably. Yet I forced myself to walk, determined to leave the cold, gloomy imperial prison. The passage was narrow, a faint light visible at its end. Amidst the flickering lamplight, Zhu Chu's face was etched with worry. I began to run forward. He came toward me and pulled me into his arms. The emperor lay gravely ill, commanding the Grand Secretary to govern in his stead, on the auspicious day chosen by the Ministry of Rights. I reached through my veil and steadied Zhu Chu's outstretched hand. This spring, the peach tree blooms once more. The blossoms flourish, promising a bountiful harvest. A sudden breeze carries petals onto our wedding robes, as if longing to enter the palace with us. Days ago, Shu Chu paused beneath the peach tree. I fear I may never taste your peach feast, he murmured. Yet he never suggested transplanting it back to the palace. His heart held the world. Yet he cherished even the smallest plants. My maternal grandfather's teachings remained deeply ingrained in his soul. After sharing our meal and sharing our bed, Chu Chu's face glowed faintly in the candlelight. He traced the makeup on my face, murmuring softly, "The first time I saw you as a child, you were crying beneath a withered peach tree." I thought then, what a beautiful elder sister. I wished she would never cry again. I smiled and asked, "Why didn't you recognize me that day in the palace?" Shu Chu's astonishment fell upon my eyes. "I feared you'd think I'd come to collect what you owed." My heart fluttered. Dredging up old grievances would only expose my own forgetfulness. I hooked my arm around his waist, drew him closer, and pressed my lips to his. The imperial wedding meant to ward off misfortune failed to delay His Majesty's passing. He passed away suddenly in winter. The nation mourned, and the crown prince ascended the throne. My maternal grandfather never returned to Yuezhou. Shu Chu granted him a ceremonial post. He refused time and again, yet was kept each time. I touched my slightly rounded belly, a shy smile playing on my lips. Shu Chu said, "Lord Lu, I can only rest assured that my prince will be well raised under your guidance." Shu Chu carefully escorted me back to the palace. After a short nap, he still sat by my bedside. He gently stroked the hair at my temple, his smile tender. "What did you dream of?" I recalled the fading fragments of my dream. I dreamed of the rain pavilion in the imperial garden, and the breathtaking gaze of someone who looked up. The end.